Okay, welcome to the My Sugar-Free Journey podcast. We have a fantastic guest with us today, someone I've actually been meaning to have on here for a little while. We've had Vinny Tortorich on this podcast a couple times. We've had Anna Vocino. So I wanted to complete the set and get Andy Schreiber on the podcast this week. So Andy is the head monkey in charge, I guess, of Pure Vitamin Club. And you guys have heard me talk about Pure Vitamin Club many, many times on this podcast because I think their magnesium is easily the best magnesium I've ever had in my life. It's fantastic. Looks like his video feed has frozen a little bit, so hopefully, oh, there he goes. There he's back.
Yeah,
we lost you there for a minute.
I don't know what's going on there, but
no big deal. No big deal. You didn't miss anything. I was just talking about how I think your magnesium, and I have some of the other stuff. I've tried your the multi-caps and everything, but I gotta say that the magnesium that you guys offer is probably the best product I've ever seen, I've ever used, and it is the only vitamin product I've ever used where I actually felt the difference. Usually you take it.
We hear that a lot, and thank you. I'm glad to hear that because we worked really, really hard on that one.
Yeah, it's great. So, Andy, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. How did you get into this?
Well, I've only been in this business now since I started Pure Vitamin Club. That's we started working on it about 5 years ago. Vinny Tortorich, my partner, business partner, and I have been friends for 27 years. And this is something that he'd been wanting to do for quite some time. I was in another business entirely. I was in the film distribution business, mostly foreign, and meaning selling internationally, not selling foreign films here. And Vinny and I had done a couple little businesses together, nothing that ever really took off. And then after his podcast became really popular and his book did really well and he had kind of a following, he had been thinking about doing this vitamin business for a long time because it was, initially partially out of self-interest. He couldn't find vitamins that he liked that met his requirements. So he said, I'm just going to do it myself. And he called me up one day and just said, we're going in the vitamin business. And I said, okay. And we started working on it right away. We have a third partner, Dean, who's more of a silent partner, but the three of us got together over lunch and mapped out the basic ideas and then got to work.
I didn't realize that Dean Laurie was a partner. I don't know that he's ever mentioned that, or if he has, I missed it.
Yeah, he's a silent partner in the business. Silent, really, by his choice. He's got lots of other stuff to do, but
so Dean Laurie was the co-author.
He was part of the original planning.
Mm-hmm. I was saying Dean Laurie was the co-author on his book, correct?
Yes, correct.
Good deal. Well, so when he approached you about the vitamins that you guys were going to sell, what was going to put the Pure Vitamin Club and make it distinct from the other vitamins on the market?
Well, right away, the big thing was that there literally wasn't anything on the market that didn't have at least some form of artificial ingredients and fillers and additives and what they call flow agents and all this kind of crap that's really not only unnecessary, but actually potentially harmful. Mm-hmm. You just couldn't find it. You could find some that were better than others, but there was nothing out there, and they weren't just well thought out. They weren't well prepared. They weren't. There was no good product out there. So that was a big part of it. The other part was we were watching, with great interest as just people who are interested in business, the success of Dollar Shave Club.
Yeah,
and that model of providing a great product at a reasonable price and the convenience of the subscription model. And we said, why don't we make ourselves the Dollar Shave Club of vitamins, but also, make the superior product. And that was, how we even arrived at the name Pure Vitamin Club. When we sat down that day over lunch, Dean and Vinny and myself, we were just trying to figure, okay, what are we going to call this thing? And it was as simple as, well, what are we doing? We're selling vitamins. They're pure. They have no additives, and it's a club. And that came together as Pure Vitamin Club, and we looked at each other. Well, that's like too obvious. It's gonna, that name's not going to be available. The URL won't be available. The trademark won't be available, and it all was. And we literally at lunch on our phones bought the URL and got our attorney to start working on the trademark.
It's fascinating. Years ago, I can't even think of how many years ago it was. My wife and I, or my wife and some of her friends, threw an event at a blogging conference where it was basically an opportunity for vendors and bloggers to come together and like just hang out together, have a cocktail or whatever.
Yeah.
And one of the people that was invited was the guy in charge of Dollar Shave Club. And so I remember talking to him this is probably 6 months before he really blew up. And he was saying, well, we charge $1 and we send people razors through the mail. And I remember him telling me that, and I'm thinking, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. What is this? And then he had that viral ad that just went crazy. And I was like, right. Oh my gosh, maybe this guy's onto something. Of course, now he's probably got more money than all of us put together. I mean,
they sold that company to Unilever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For $1 billion.
Yep. That was amazing. And just to talk to him, he wasn't anything. He was just a guy with an idea, and he was selling razors out of his garage, basically.
Yeah.
To hear him tell it, and I just thought, oh my gosh, what is this? And then that first ad of his blew up, and I thought, man, clearly this guy knew something. And he's not that way. You see that ad, and he looks like he's, the life of the party. He's not. He was just a shy, quiet guy. And
I'm sure. And, he's playing a character. He's playing this kind of cocky, arrogant, guy. But obviously, it was very smart. I think they sunk a lot of money into that ad. But it was great. It was really well done. And, they call that lightning in a bottle when you you catch fire like that. There's no way of knowing in advance if something is going to take off like that. For all your best intentions, but they got I don't want to say lucky, because it was really well done, and they put a lot of work into it, but it succeeded. So that was a great inspiration for us.
So I'm going to tell you the story of when I stopped buying vitamins online, or just stopped buying vitamins at all until I started using you guys. So because I bet that you've heard some variation of the story before. So I used to buy from Amazon, just, if I needed a vitamin, I'd get something from Amazon. I didn't really know what it was. I wasn't really loyal to any particular brand. And then I listened to a podcast one time. It was on Pat Flynn's podcast, and he was interviewing a guy who had made his millions selling vitamins through Amazon. And so I was listening. I was like, okay, well, how is this guy doing it? Well, how he was doing it was he was getting the cheapest vitamins that he could get from China, and then having them shipped to a some kind of like warehouse or whatever. But at the warehouse, what they did was, because it was just a white bottle, they put the fanciest, prettiest label on the bottle that they could get, and then they put it in not just like a box, but like a very fancy wooden box that had a hinged lid on it. So like when you got your vitamins, it was in this wooden box, and you would lift up the lid, and it was like in red velvet, and the boxes were all fitted into like this foam that that was shaped to eat. And this guy went on for 25 minutes talking about how much time he put into the experience of what you feel when you open up this case of vitamins, and could not care one bit about what was actually in the vitamin. And when Pat Flynn kind of pressed him on this, his response was, well, we do what we're federally mandated to do, which is literally nothing. They could sell sawdust in these, in these vitamin capsules and charge just as much and be just as legal.
As long as what the label says is what's actually in the product. That's where the regulations do kick in. You have to be accurate. Okay.
But who's testing that? Who's looking at that?
Any company, including ours, every time we do a run, a brand new run, and we try to manage that process as well as we can, so we never run out and don't over order, but so every time we do a run, as soon as that run is done, before we can sell one bottle from that run of vitamins, they have to go through the third-party independent testing. So there are agencies that do that. They come in.
And now, are you doing that, or is the government saying that has to be done?
It's the government saying, that has to be done. There are companies that don't do it, but you can't have the certifications. We have, NSF certification, GMP, these certifications that say that this facility is run under these guidelines.
Okay.
So in order to do that, you have to do that. And so a third-party company comes in. They test it for contaminants and heavy metals, and also to make sure that what's on the label is actually what's in the vitamin, in the, whether it's a vitamin or mineral, whatever it is, that the labeling is accurate. And if it isn't accurate, they can force you to recall them and fine you. And if it happens more, you can eventually get shut down.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Just to hear this guy talk about it, it was like no time was spent, dealing with the actual product itself. And I thought, what am I doing? I'm like, what am I buying?
And you know what? That is really, really common. That's what you're describing is called white labeling, first of all, where
white label. That's what he called it.
Yeah. When you take somebody else's product and you slap your label on it. And, you'll find that when people go to their nutritionist or their, naturopath or some sort of healer, and they've got their own line of vitamins sitting in their offices, they'll sell you 95 times out of 100, 99 times out of 100. Those are white labeled. Those doctors and naturopaths and nutritionists are not all doing their own vitamin labels. They're buying from some mass-produced place and putting their own label on it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So what are you guys doing that's different than that?
There are our own formulations that we have worked out ourselves. We've hired experts because, we do a lot of research ourselves and put a lot of work into it, but we still want to make sure that we have experts in the field working with us. And so they are exclusive formulations to us. We work with a contract manufacturer who makes them to our specifications. And we own the formulas. We don't allow anybody else to take our formulas and put their label on them. And we're not using anybody else's formulas.
Okay, that's interesting. So your first product was the multi-cap. What were you guys, what were your goals for that? And what were your goals for the quality? What were your goals for the cells that you were wanting to hit? And how has that performed in the intervening years? How long ago you've been doing this, 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah, we launched October 2nd, 2014. So just almost, 4 years and almost 2 months.
Okay. Yeah, I remember. I thought it was about 4 years ago.
In terms of the product, we just wanted to create a all-purpose multivitamin, multi-mineral that covered all the bases, that did what that product is supposed to do, which is fill in on a daily basis, because everybody has different gaps in their nutrition, and those gaps change from day to day. One day you don't get enough vitamin D, the next day you don't get enough vitamin B12. So you want to make sure that you've got a formula that covers your bases, that's not overloading you, that's not giving you toxic amounts, that's not giving you more than your body can handle, you're just going to pee away, but that's going to make sure that you are covered with the basics. That was the idea of the formula. And then in terms of a business goal, we chose the subscription model, and we did it in a very specific way so that there were no commitments. We didn't want anybody to feel trapped into it. We made that clear from the start. You can subscribe and 2 weeks later, cancel before your next shipment. The idea is not to rope anybody in, it's to make it convenient so you don't have to think about it. Every 90 days it's going to come. And, our goal was, being completely honest, we just didn't know how many subscribers we would get. We just thought, let's put it out there and see where it can take us. We had some ideas and some aspirations, but we wound up in the first 3 months with about 1,000 subscribers in the first, before the end of that year. Wow. Which we were really happy with, because you just don't know until you put something like that out. But we were super happy with that. Right out of the gate, we had a problem with our website. we were offering, and we still do, we offer a 30-day plan as well as the 90 on the multi-cap. And it's set, with the system to auto-renew, right, every 30 days or every 90 days. So we were super excited from the start to see what happens after 30 days, to see the system work and generate the auto billing. And when the 31st day came, it didn't. It wasn't working. Mm. And we after we kind of freaked out a little bit, we said, okay, this can be fixed. And we started to just monitor this and fill people's orders even without collecting the money on those, because we didn't want people, to be disappointed and not get their orders. So we were just shipping them manually to make sure that they got their orders. But, a week went by, and 2 weeks and 3 weeks, and our web guy couldn't figure out what was wrong. And, then it was like a month and 6 weeks. And we started to panic because first of all, we're shipping out all this free product.
Right.
And we are new subscribers coming all the time. We don't know what to do. We finally fired the guy that built the website and hired somebody in to fix it, because we were getting close to the 90-day renewal, and now we were going to really be in trouble if the 90 days didn't work. So they came in, we got a new company to come in and fix it, and they fixed it fine, and they came to me and they said, okay, the good news is we have it fixed. The bad news is, and this was when we already had like 1,000 subscribers, none of those people are actually subscribed. None of those subscriptions took.
Gosh.
So we had to go back to 1,000 people and say, thank you so much for subscribing, but this happened. We had a glitch in our system, and you're not subscribed. So if you want to get any more, you have to resubscribe.
Yeah.
And so we offered everybody a 30% or 35, I don't remember anymore, discount for resubscribing. And we had to pace those out, because we couldn't go to somebody who had just ordered a week before and had a 90-day subscription and say, you need to resubscribe. They wouldn't do it for the next. So we had to schedule out the emails to people. And it took sometimes 4 and 5 emails deep to get people to respond. But we wound up with about 70% of those initial people back, which wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But, that almost put us out of business right out of the gate.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm glad you guys survived that. You mentioned the different nutritional requirements. One of probably the biggest knocks against vitamins is that, if you eat a healthy diet, you don't need them, and you just end up peeing them out, and your body has a hard time absorbing vitamins from a pill, because it's not how the body recognizes it, as in terms of it not being in real food. How would you handle that objection?
I would say that you're going to find people making both sides of that argument. And, what we tell people, especially when you get into our specific products, away from the multi-cap, which is meant to cover all those gaps, when you're talking about a vitamin B12 or a vitamin D or some of the other things that we do, not everybody needs every one.
Right.
But some people are deficient in B12. B12 is one of the vitamins that many people are deficient in, and vitamin D as well, vitamin D3. And magnesium is, of all the nutrients, one of the things that more people are deficient in than anything else. Mm-hmm. And that's has more functions in your body in terms of how it actually helps. So, we tell people, if you don't need vitamin B12, not everybody does. Look at your symptoms. Do you bear any of the symptoms of B12 deficiency? Chronic fatigue, low energy, bleeding gums, aching muscles.
Being vegan.
Yeah. Oh, and if you're a vegan, by all means, you need B12, because you do not get Absolutely. B12 from any vegetable foods. It only comes from animal-based food. So, any vegan will know that you have to take a B12 supplement. So we tell people, not every product is for everybody. We promote the idea of the multi-cap for everybody, because everybody needs those gaps filled. And, there is significant evidence that they do help with that, as well as the very strong anecdotal that people report, really good results from it. Is it going to, cure your diseases and, make you feel perfect all the time? No, that's not what it's meant to do. But, a specific product like the magnesium There's so many things that magnesium does for the body that if you have a really good formula, and I'm super proud of ours, I think it's the best. As you were saying, you actually feel the results.
Oh yeah. In fact, the first time I took your magnesium, it was so relaxing because I took it like an hour before bed, and boy, it put me out like a light. I remember the next morning thinking, "Am I like? Is this a sign that I am severely magnesium deficient? That when I take this magnesium pill, it affects me so strongly?" But really, every time I take it, it's very relaxing, and I take it almost like a sleeping pill.
I do too. I take one. I take actually 2 every night.
Yeah, my wife has sometimes has restless leg syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
and she the nights that she takes her magnesium, that she remembers to take her magnesium, it's not an issue. She doesn't have an issue. So I don't know what's going on there.
It does help with that. I could tell you just dozens and dozens of stories of people that write to me or call me and tell me stories like that they're restless leg syndrome or nightly leg and foot cramps that they get that have gone away.
Yep.
And that their mood is actually better and that their sleep is more restful. We've just had unbelievable results from that. And from our B12 too. I've had people call and write me and say, I've been taking other B12 supplements for years and my numbers are still never good. And I still have chronic fatigue. And I take yours and my numbers I went to the doctor, my numbers are back into a normal range. And that didn't happen from any other product.
That's interesting. Now, your magnesium supplement, I know that when you get like just a little cheap magnesium supplement from the grocery store or whatever, it's just one type of magnesium. I think it's like magnesium citrate maybe.
Mostly it's magnesium citrate. Sometimes you'll see magnesium carbonate, and a better product that you'll see sometimes is magnesium glycinate.
Okay, but yours has 4 different types of magnesium, right?
Correct.
How did you guys decide to do that, and what are the advantages of having multiple types of magnesium in one pill?
Well, there are a couple of advantages. Number one, magnesium citrate, first of all, which is the most common that you'll find, has very severe side effects. Okay. Primarily that it's a laxative. So like if you're going to go for a colonoscopy and you need to clean yourself out the night before, what they give you is a magnesium citrate solution to drink because it's such a powerful laxative. So
this is like milk of magnesia, right?
I'm sorry?
This is like milk of magnesia?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's usually magnesium carbonate because it does help with indigestion. Magnesium citrate, if you're going to have a colonoscopy, the day before, your doctor will have given you this or told you to buy at the drugstore this magnesium citrate solution. It's usually like a lemon lime flavored kind of thing, and it's awful. And what it does is you spend the entire day. They'll tell you don't go to work that day, stay close to home, because you're going to spend the day on the toilet, right? Because you have to be completely cleaned out, and that'll do it. So if you're trying to take magnesium for the restful effects of it, for your muscle aches or the muscle cramping, and you take magnesium citrate, you're going to have those other side effects. Magnesium carbonate will have some of that. So when we looked at that, we said, how can we deliver a magnesium formula that gives you all of the benefits of a number, the best forms of magnesium, because they all do something slightly different in the body. We include in ours magnesium taurate, which has the unusual benefit that it actually helps regulate your heart rhythm. So people who have any kind of arrhythmia or those sorts of issues, I've gotten calls saying, I had arrhythmia and I would get that skip beat, and that's gone now since I take yours. So there are other called broad spectrum when you combine several types. There are others on the market, but there were none with this formula. And we just did extensive research on which forms perform, what functions in the body. And that came down as the best formula that we could put into the capsule. And again, with no additives, no fillers, because in addition to them being unnecessary and sometimes harmful, they block your absorption, so you're not getting the full benefit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember several years ago listening. Martin Short was, or Steve Martin was on a show talking about him and three of his buddies. And I forget which. I know it was Martin Short, and I forget. I was just trying to think of who the other two guys were, and I don't remember who they were. But they all scheduled colonoscopies the next day. So they all met at Steve Martin's house. They drank their little magnesium citrate or whatever it was, and they each staked out a bathroom in his house. And that was, they just sat and played poker all night and kept going to the bathroom.
As long as they had the 4 bathrooms, because you would need it.
Yeah, I thought that was hysterical. The product that you had was the B12, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that formulation and what that can do for your average user.
Yeah. Here's the thing about B12. B12 does not absorb well in the gut.
Right.
The balance of your stomach acid has to be exactly right, or it's going to destroy the B12. You're not going to get the benefit. So the best way to take it without going and getting a shot, which some people can do, is with what they call the sublingual tablets, because then they dissolve in your mouth and they're absorbed directly through the soft tissue in your mouth. People think it's under the tongue, but it's all the soft tissues in your mouth are porous enough that when the tablet dissolves, it just goes right through those membranes in your mouth, and so like the inside of your cheek, your gums, all of it absorbs through all those tissues. The problem is that the amount of actual, and if you've ever seen, you've seen, I'm sure, our B12s, but any sublingual B12 tablet, they're tiny, right?
Right.
But the amount of actual B12 that's in there is even tinier still. It's a fraction of that. That's the actual B12. So they have to put it in something to carry it. They call it a bulking agent or, a carrier. And that has to, A, be able to hold onto the B12, B, dissolve in your mouth, right? So every other product out there were only 2 choices of what that bulking agent that the B12 is carried in, what those were. It was either lactose, which is, basically lactic acid, or something called microcrystalline cellulose. Okay. Now, both of those are problematic. First of all, they both require some sort of a binding agent to make them work, to make them hold their shape. Lactose for, especially for vegans, and vegans, as I said, need B12. If you're being a really strict vegan, you can't take that because it's lactose. It's an animal product. Right. Microcrystalline cellulose is a plant product, and people get confused when you hear cellulose because pretty much any vegetable matter is some form of cellulose. So if you're eating celery, that's cellulose, to some extent. But what form of cellulose is important. This particular type that they use to make the bulking agents for tablets, called microcrystalline cellulose, they refine the particles so small. They call them micro nanoparticles. Okay, so they are so minuscule that they're actually able to penetrate your cell walls. They can go in and out of your cell walls, and eventually they get stuck and they stay in your cells. So it causes inflammation that's permanent because they're so small, they just get stuck there. So it's a terrible, terrible ingredient. So we said, how can we do this in a way that doesn't use either of those, and that also doesn't use the usual kind of binders and flavorings and sweeteners and all the other stuff that they put in there to make it palatable. So what we came up with after a lot of research and working with our manufacturing partners is that we could use just pure calcium citrate, which is something that's good for you anyway. It's something that you would take on its own. You wouldn't take this for the benefit of calcium because it's a very small amount. But the idea is that it's a completely safe and healthy carrier for the B12, and that we could hold it together with just pressure. We didn't need anything that was a binder. That if you just pressed it hard in the tableting machine, what you did need is some sort of a lubricant, because otherwise The powder starts to accumulate and it clogs up the machinery. We tried it without. Virtually every other company uses something called magnesium stearate, which we talk about a lot because it's a binder. Like a flow agent slash lubricant that is pretty toxic. It will cause inflammation and it will block absorption. So we didn't want to use that. So we found that the one thing that we could use that would keep the machinery smoothly running and enable us to do it this way is something called calcium laurate, which is also just calcium, but added to lauric acid, which is essentially the oil that's used like in coconut oil.
Okay.
So it's basically calcium and coconut oil added to the calcium citrate and the B12. The B12 itself is red. B12 in the form, and this is the other thing. There are several different types of B12. There's the type that we use, which is called methylcobalamin, which means it's the cobalamin itself is the B12, and it has to be bound to another molecule or it won't hold together. So this is with a methylcobalamin. A lot of the companies out there will sell something called cyanocobalamin, which is using a cyanide molecule. Cyanide as in the poison. Now, right. It's not enough cyanide to, really poison you or certainly kill you, but there's no reason to be putting cyanide into your body. The most immediate effect is that in order for your body to be able to use the B12, because cyanocobalamin is not a natural form, your liver has to convert that back to methylcobalamin so that you can use it. So it's taxing your liver, which then has to excrete the cyanide molecule. So we used only the methylcobalamin, which is the natural form. And then it's just got that, the calcium laurate, and the calcium citrate. And that's it.
Some people have a lot of problems with B12 absorption, right? Their body doesn't methylate the B12. And
right.
Is this a way to kind of bypass that?
It is, because absorbed through the in the mouth, and it's already methylated. That's why it's called methylcobalamin. So people absorb it very, very well.
Okay. Now, then the one that really kind of fascinates me, I haven't ordered any yet because my vitamin D levels appear to be okay every time I get them checked. But vitamin D is kind of a tricky vitamin because you have to take it with fat for the body to absorb it.
Right.
And usually the fat that you get it with is just the crappiest fat you can imagine. It's usually sunflower seed oil or safflower seed oil or something like that.
Because it's the cheapest, yeah. So you'll find, you won't find vitamin D in a non-fatty formula, but that's really to be stayed away from because you're not going to absorb it. So most of the vitamin D that you'll find is D3 as opposed to D2, first of all. And it's in they call them soft gels. It's the little squishy oil-filled, they call them soft gels. And as you said, most of the companies will use, safflower oil or canola oil or some kind of junky oil because it's the cheapest.
Right.
A couple things about that. Number one, in order for vitamin D3 to do its best work, which has to do with making sure that your body is absorbing calcium, you really should be taking it with vitamin K, because the vitamin K then helps you prevent that calcium from forming into deposits. It helps your body, use it better. So you need to be taking it with vitamin K. There are several forms of vitamin K. There's vitamin K2 and vitamin K1, and vitamin K2 actually splits up into two different forms of K2, getting super technical. But what we did when we wanted to create this, and this took us, months and months to find people that would work with us to do what we wanted, was not only did we want to not use a junky oil like a safflower or canola, we wanted to get the best oil we could possibly find for this. And doing our research, we settled on a company out of Italy called Villa Capelli that has an olive oil production down. I've actually been there. They've got groves down there, olive groves it's kind of southeast Italy. It's like, if you can picture the map of Italy that looking like a boot, it's like near the top of the heel of the boot on the east coast there. And so we're importing that oil from Italy to put into the capsules, the soft gels. And then we're using not only the D3, but we're using K1 and both forms of K2. So you're getting the full K complex.
Interesting. Yeah. Like I said, I haven't ordered that yet, but that's definitely, I think, on my next order. That's what
again, if your D3 numbers or, vitamin D numbers are good, you may not need it.
Right.
D3 is it's a very common deficiency, and it's also seasonal. You may do very well with your D levels in the summer, and then in winter and I don't know what your weather is like, if you have, a very gray, gloomy kind of winter, you won't be getting as much, because vitamin D, we don't get a whole lot in our food. Most of our vitamin D comes from the sun.
Right.
We absorb it through our skin. So people who don't spend much time in the sun, people who live in gray climates, especially in winter, people who are darker skinned, people with darker skin don't absorb as much through their skin as lighter skinned people, are more likely to have vitamin D deficiencies. And that can affect your mood. It can affect your bone health. There are a lot of different ways that can affect you. When I don't know if you ever heard people talk about seasonal affective disorder.
Right.
Which is where people get literally kind of depressed and down in the winter because they're not getting enough sunlight, because without that vitamin D, it does affect your mood.
Yep.
So, in the winter, even for people who do well with D in the summer, we advocate the D in the winter.
Perfect. All right. So we're kind of at the end of our time, but I wanted to give you a few minutes just to talk about your last product, Ultra Salt. So this is like a brand new product, right?
This is as of May of this year we launched it.
Yeah. So this is interesting. Who is this for?
This is for anybody who sweats, basically. If you're doing a lot of sweating. So if you are doing a lot of outdoor athletics, if you are running marathons or hiking or cycling or swimming, and you're perspiring a lot, when you perspire that way, or people who work outdoors, any kind of manual outdoor labor where you're really doing a lot of perspiring. I'm sure you've had this happen where you've been, whatever you're doing, you get really sweaty, and after the sweat evaporates, you have like white,
right,
residue on your skin. That's from all of the electrolytes, the minerals that are in your sweat that come out when you're sweating. So when you lose those minerals, it affects your muscle function. It affects your circulation. You need those those minerals to maintain your hydration. Hydration is not just water; it's the minerals as well. So growing up, we were always told drink Gatorade. That's what's going to replace your electrolytes. Well, Gatorade is more sugar than anything else. It's sugar and food coloring, and might have a little salt in there.
Right.
So, Vinny, being an athlete and an ultra athlete who's done those crazy super marathons where they're running 100 miles or whatever, it was super interested in this area. And there are other electrolyte capsules out there. There are some good companies like S-Caps and Salt. What is it called? There are a handful of really good products, but there were none that were really great. So we set out to do the best electrolyte capsule that we could, and that starts with salt. The number one aspect of an electrolyte is salt. It's not just salt; it's salt, and it's potassium, and it's magnesium, and it's manganese, and it's calcium. But the backbone of your electrolytes is the salt. So we started by, let's find the best salt in the world, the absolute best, purest salt that's going to give you the best results. And we looked at everything from the Himalayan to everything you could think of. And we settled on a company out of Utah that is mining the salt there from an ancient salt bed from what is essentially was millions of years ago an ocean where Utah is now. And there's this amazing salt deposit there. So we got that salt, and we worked really hard to make it a formula that would work better than anything else, which meant keeping it very alkaline. Because if you're doing that kind of sweating and losing your electrolytes, the more alkaline, the less cramping you're going to have, the more you're going to be able to absorb this. And also, one of the complaints that people have about other electrolyte capsule product is it can upset their stomachs. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we did was with our potassium that we put in there, we used potassium bicarbonate because, if you talk about if you have an upset stomach, you take bicarbonate of soda. And that's because bicarbonate is very relaxing and comforting and soothing to the stomach. So we have people coming to us and saying, I do these ultra marathons and I take the electrolytes, but they always make me puke. And yours are the first ones that don't make me puke because of the way you did the formula. The other thing that people use it for, and if you go out drinking and you're going to get, maybe have one more than you like, and you might have a hangover, you pop a couple of these before you go out and another couple before bed, no hangover. Because the biggest thing that a reason you're getting a hangover is because you're dehydrated.
Right.
So if you take some of these with water, that's key, is taking it with a full glass of water. Mm-hmm. Your body's not going to get dehydrated and you'll wake up feeling fine.
Good. Well, what's next for Pure Vitamin Club?
We're working on a children's formula.
Oh, okay.
There are literally no children's vitamins that aren't in some sort of a sweetened candy form. They're either gummies or chewables or, some sort of garbage. So you're feeding your kids either sugar or artificial sweeteners and colors and all that. So it's going to be formulated specifically with children's nutrition. It's not going to be like taking our multi-cap and cutting it in half. It's going to be very specifically formulated for children's nutritional needs. And by children, I mean under 8. Mm-hmm. But in capsule form.
What cartoon character will they be shaped like?
Is there a cartoon character that looks like a capsule? Because
I'm sure there is.
What it's going to be shaped like.
It always blows me away every time I see Flintstones vitamins on the shelf. Flintstones hasn't been a thing in 50 years. I mean, they went off the air, I think, before I was born, and yet here's Flintstone vitamins.
Flintstones vitamins. It's the number one selling kids vitamins to this day.
It's amazing.
And they're candy.
Yeah. I mean, there are kids whose grandparents, may have watched Flintstones, on TV when they're
sure. I mean, I'm old enough to be a grandfather. I'm not, but I could be. And I was watching Flintstones as a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It always blows me away. Okay. Well, that's great to hear. I really appreciate you coming on. So if my listeners, I was going to say this, guys, we have an affiliate link for Pure Vitamin Club. If you guys want to get, to order Pure Vitamin Clubs. I love Pure Vitamin Club products. I love their stuff. If you go to mysugarfreejourney.com/PVC, that's the link. It'll take you right to them. It's a fantastic product. What else do they need to know? Where they can follow you on social media and all that good stuff?
Yeah, we have Pure Vitamin Club on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. And as of this Saturday, December 1st, we now have purevitaminclub.co.uk, where we will be available to buyers not only in the UK, but anywhere in the Eurozone. So if you're in France or Germany or Switzerland or Spain or Denmark, anywhere, Poland, you'll be able to order Pure Vitamin Club.
And will they still be able to order Pure Vitamin Club after Brexit?
Yes. None of that is completely worked out, but it's all going to be fine.
Okay, well, good. That seems like Armageddon over there.
I know it's a crazy thing, and they still don't know what they're doing. And I think if they were to have the referendum again today, that it would go the other way, because I don't think people really understood it.
Yeah.
But the complication, the reason it's taking so long for them to work it out, is because they realize there's so much commerce going back and forth between UK and the rest of Europe now, that if they don't do this the right way, it's just going to be economically disastrous for everybody.
Exactly. All right. Well, Andy, I appreciate you guys coming on. Again, that link, sugarfreejourney.com/PVC. Go order. Guys, I'm telling you, if you do nothing other than just order the magnesium and try it, you'll be a Pure Vitamin Club customer for life, because that stuff, that is some high quality stuff. It's not like anything else you've ever taken.
Appreciate that.
Really, really good. All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it. You have a good day.
Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.